So, recently I did my first ever challenge run of Dark Souls 3, and during that run, a question popped into my head. Can you beat Dark Souls 3 only using boss weapons once? No. The answer is no. Because you need to beat 3 bosses before you can even make a boss weapon. But I decided I wasn't going to let that stop me. So with that said, let's get into how this run works. Starting off, I can only use a boss weapon once, which means when I kill a boss with that weapon, it can no longer be used. But anytime before the boss is killed, I can use any boss weapon that I have, which allows me experimentation with bosses and handling the locals as I see fit. At the start, I will have to mod a few boss weapons in. Due to this, I restrict myself to only being able to pick up from the first 2 bosses that have 2 options, which are the Cursed Rotted Greatwood and Abyss Watchers. For Vort's weapon, I will have to mod it in as well, but after Vort, I must kill Cursed Rotted Greatwood so that I can actually make the weapons myself. Now, there are 2 mini bosses that drop souls that make weapons, and 2 bosses that do not drop any souls at all. These 4 will be lifeline uses. When killing a mini-boss, it will not count towards the 1 boss rule, since they are not considered a full-fledged boss. For the 2 bosses that don't give weapons, I'm allowed to pick any boss weapon from a boss that I have killed previously that I have not used. So, if I kill Ancient Wyvern with Profane Greatsword, I could then pick Pontiff's other weapon, Greatsword of Judgment. I do this to make the run a bit more fun. Lastly, no summons, no armor, and I must beat every boss in the game. With that long intro over with, let's get this run started. Starting off with my class, I went with the Mercenary since it has the highest dex because the first weapon I picked to use was Astoris' Spear. Now, no starting class can use a boss weapon off the bat, so I took 3 points from Vigor and put it into Dex so that I would be able to use the weapon. And with that, I am ready to take on Gundyr. So, the reason I picked Astoris' Spear first was because its counterpart, Hollow Slayer Greatsword, deals 20% more damage to Hollows, and that includes the Deacons of the Deep, and I wanted to save it for that fight. Overall, Astoris' Spear did fine against Gundyr. Unfortunately, I couldn't benefit from the poison buildup it does, since Gundyr is immune to it, but with that said, it's a pretty easy fight. With Gundyr defeated, that left me with my next weapon of choice, which was Farron Greatsword or Wolf Knight's Greatsword. I decided to go with Wolf Knight's Greatsword since I could use Farron's weapon art, Parry, for Pontiff. Now, at this time, I didn't meet the strength requirement for the sword, so I had to use some old school DS1 farming by letting a Wyvern burn some hollows to death. Once I met the strength requirements to two-hand the weapon, I made my way to Vort. Now, you might be wondering about upgrading. Well, since all boss weapons upgrade with Titanite Scale, and there being a limited amount until you can get the ashes from Archdragon's Peak, I decided to save all my scales until I really needed them. So, for a good chunk of the game, I'll be doing no upgrades. With that said, time to take on Vort. Vort was a chill fight. With the Wolf Knight's Greatsword, it made it an easy fight, and I got to do Artoris' sword flip attack over and over again. I even killed the big guy with it. Best way to finish a boss fight. In style. With Vort being flexed on, I move on to my next weapon, Vort's Great Hammer. The cool thing about Vort's Hammer is that it does Frostbite, which deals % damage to the boss like Bleed. Sadly, the next boss is Cursed Rotted Greatwood, so I won't be able to benefit from it. Before taking on Cursed Wood, I figured I'd pick up the Bone Shard in the area. Well, definitely can't happen twice in a row. Well, fuck me then. After failing one too many times to get the Bone Shard, time to take on the Cursed Wood. For Cursed Rotted Greatwood, you're probably thinking it was an easy fight, and I had no issues with it. I am sad to say that was not the case. I ended up dying 6 times. With only having 8 vigor and no armor, it didn't take too much to kill me. It also didn't help when trying to pop the sacks on the second phase. The hammer would just miss, even though it looked like it did hit. But after those 6 shameful deaths, I can finally make boss weapons. With finally having Transposing Kiln, I bring it over to Ludlith to make Hollow Slayer Greatsword. Once getting the sword, I save Cornyx. After saving Cornyx, I meet up with Sigurd and having epic bouts with a demon. I didn't have to do this, but I like sitting down with Sigurd afterwards for a drink. With the demon dead, I collect the Flynn's Ring and Chloranthe Ring. I then make my way over to the Road of Sacrifice to get the Sage Ring and fight a giant crab for the Great Swamp Ring. We can just ignore the small crab killing me in the process. Once done there, I decided it was time to use one of my lifelines and kill the Stray Demon. Some of you could probably already guess why I say Chronicles now. So the Stray Demon Soul does not give a weapon. The two choices are Havel's Ring or Boulder Heave. I know Boulder Heave is a spell, but I decided it would be fine, and it would be the only spell that I could use since I don't have any other options for his soul. After getting Boulder Heave, I get my faith to 12 so that I can use it and talk to Chronicles to get the Pyromancy Flame so I can cast the spell. Before leaving, I reallocate my flask because I'll definitely be needing to refill my mana for the next fight. Speaking of the next fight, hello Abyss Watchers. For the Abyss Watchers, I went in with the Sage Ring for faster casting speed, Great Swap Ring for 12% more damage, Blend's Ring, which funny enough does affect Boulder Heave since it does physical damage, and Chloranthy Ring for the stamina recovery. Boulder Heave is a pretty neat spell. It shoots out a giant rock that can knock over humanoid enemies, but at the cost of range. You have to be pretty close to the enemy for it to land on them. Overall, this spell works really well on the Abyss Walkers with it being able to knock them to the ground, and you can even get 2 knockdowns in a row. I did try to get 3, but every single time they recovered after the second one, so I eventually gave up on that idea. For the first phase, I didn't have any issues, but the second phase definitely put up a good challenge. Even with the Sage Ring, the cast time is a bit slow, so it would leave me wide open. I ended up dying 16 times in total. The strategy I found for this fight was to punish their jump attack. Once they do their 2 swings, you can just walk underneath the jump and get an easy hit in. So I just played it safe and just waited for this one attack to finally kill the Abyss Watchers with my rock hard balls. With the Abyss Watchers defeated, I get Farron Greatsword. From here, I unfortunately have to go through the catacombs, while here I kill a skull dude with a cool hat for a bone shard and pick up the Karthus Blood Ring. Once done there, I headed down the bridge ladder to use my second lifeline, the Fire Demon. I'm doing this so that I don't have to use either Farron Greatsword or Hollow Slayer Greatsword for the Crystal Sage, since I will need both of these weapons for a specific boss. Funny enough, I didn't have to do anything for this fight because the skeletons killed him for me. That's a first. With having the Fire Demon Soul, I have a choice between Demon's Fist and Demon's Great Axe. I decided to go with the Demon's Fist simply because I like fist weapons and I'm pretty sure I'll need the Demon Axe for later. I then use the remaining souls I have to level to 32 and to take on the Crystal Sage. The really cool thing about the Demon's Fist is that its weapon art does this fire spinning attack that can be comboed into the R2 for a slam attack. Sadly, with this weapon being unupgraded, it didn't do as much damage as just spamming R1. Even with how easily this weapon stuns the Crystal Sage, I got a bit unlucky in the first round where I got saved by the Magic Pixel to then get sniped right afterwards. Round 2 was a lot smoother and faster with just spamming R1. I also found out you can use the sound of the Sage appearing to know which side she will pop up on. So that was cool to learn, but with that, the Crystal Sage goes down. After giving the Crystal Sage a good old fisting, I go back to Ludleth and trade in her soul for the Crystal Sage Rapier. With the Sage defeated, I make my way over to the Cathedral of the Deep. Here I collect another Bone Shard, died collecting Lloyd's Sword Ring somehow, did a speedrunner skip so that I don't have to deal with the Giant, and equipped Hollow Slayer Greatsword to take on the Deacons of the Deep. As stated earlier, Hollow Slayer Greatsword deals an extra 20% of damage to the Deacons, so that's why I saved it for this fight. I also just realized that the Deacons in his first phase only takes damage until after the mob with his soul dies. Honestly, I did not notice that in my last run. I was hoping with Hollow Slayer it would make this fight a walk in the park, but tragically I ended up dying 4 times. Apparently my character just has a fetish for thick, ugly bastards jumping on top of him. So, in the 5th round, I made sure to take out as many thick bastards as possible to leave no room for being taken advantage of. And with that, Hollow Slayer slayed some hollows. After slaying the Deacons with my big sword, I turn in their soul for their candlestick. So, the reason I did this route was because the Cleric's Candlestick is considered to be the worst boss weapon in the game, and there are only 2 bosses I could see it being used on, Walnir or Ancient Wyvern. Since there's no way to get to Ancient Wyvern right now, that only leaves me with Walnir. As expected, it only did 52 damage to Walnir, but lucky for me, all I have to do is hit Walnir's golden cuffs a few times for it to break and do massive damage. What I didn't take into account was the black fog he summons that can do tick damage. But after that small mistake, I didn't have any issues with beating Walnir with the Cleric Candlestick. I was even able to beat him fast enough that he only summoned one skeleton. Poor little guy, didn't even know his life was going to be this short. After slapping Wolnir with my stick, I head back to Firelink Shrine and level up to 38 while happily neglecting Vigor, and trade in Wolnir's soul for his holy sword. Once done at Firelink Shrine, I head over to Smoldering Lake to take on the old Demon King. I decided to use the Crystal Sage Rapier for this fight, since I couldn't see it being used on any other boss after this. It does have some nice perks like being the longest thrusting sword in the game, if you know what I mean, wink wink. And it increases item discovery. Sadly, it scales with intelligence, and currently I only have 10, which means I'm smart enough to buy spells from Griggs, but not strong enough to deal decent damage. A whopping 54 damage with Lloyd's Sword Ring. So after my second try, I figured it would be best to come back later. So I leave Smoldering Lake to go to Ithral of the Boreal Valley to fight with a croc dog who has Pontiff's right eye. I died here more times than I would like to admit to. Damn it, Scully! After fussing at Scully, I made my way through the valley collecting the magic clutch ring and opening some shortcuts. Once done making a ruckus in the valley, I finally leveled up my vigor past 8, putting that 10 intelligence to full use. With me pumping up my health, I figured it was time to learn how to parry Pontiff because I have never done it before. For this fight, I of course went with the Farron Greatsword for its ability to parry. Now, for parrying Pontiff. At the start, I knew I could parry his first attack, but I always found myself parrying too soon or too late. It wasn't until I figured out if you press the parry button when his sword is right above his head, you can parry this attack every time. I also found letting go of the left analog stick helps as well for some weird reason. Also, after every parry, I can get a single R1 in for extra damage. Now, after the first parry, I would just back up and just wait for his basic right sword attack. I know there are a bunch of other opportunities, but this was the only one that I was consistent with. After the second parry, it would always send him into his second phase. For this phase, I just tried to punish his leaping attack or his jumping attack. The timing in this phase was much easier since you could just dodge the clone and then parry right after for an easy crit. I wish I could say I figured this all out in a few tries, but I'm not that good at the game, so it took me 22 tries until I was finally able to parry Pontiff to death. After getting a taste of what it's like to be ONG Ball, I trade in Pontiff's Soul for Profane Greatsword. I went with Profane Greatsword over Greatsword of Judgment simply because Profane does fire damage and Judgment does magic damage, and the next boss I'll be taking on is Aldrich. And we all know magic wouldn't be a good matchup for that fight. So from here, I run through Anor Londo past some archers that give me some PTSD from DS1. Luckily, the ones here aren't as bad as the DS1 Silver Knights. PTSD aside, it's time to take on Aldrich, the Devourer of Femboys. I was not expecting Aldrich of all bosses to be a roadblock on this run. I guess it's to be expected with me getting closer to the end of the base game that my damage would just start to dwindle due to not upgrading, but I didn't think that would cause me any issues with this fight. My main issue was his second phase. His first phase is really easy to deal with. I even found out you can just run around his bow attack in the first phase, which made the fight easier than it already was. Now, the second phase is where things start to get a bit annoying. My issue was the damn fire he spawns and his wonky hitboxes. To be honest, I should have just been patient and attacked his backside more than the front, but I was getting frustrated at the time, so I kept going for his head for more damage, which would lead to me tunnel visioning and dying. For his hitbox, it has to do with the spear being the entire hitbox, even the hilt. As you can see right here, when Aldrich does his thrust attack, he pulls the spear back, which I then get hit by the hilt, not the spear itself, and take full damage as if I was hit by the spear, which left me super confused at the time, not knowing how I got hit until I went look at the footage and slowed it down. I'm going to be honest, this feels a bit cheap. I would understand some damage, but the full force of the attack is a bit much. Sadly, the Profane Greatsword special perk of having fire attacks didn't help at all. So I simply just had to beat my head against the wall until I won, and after 47 deaths, I was finally able to kill Aldrich, the bitch. With Aldrich defeated and my voice hurting from cursing Miyazaki's name, I backtracked through Anor Londo to pick up the Eastern Ashes to be able to buy Dark Arrows for later. I then head to Firelink Shrine and get the Dark Moon Longbow from Aldrich's Soul. While here, I decided to do some leveling and get my intelligence to 22 and buy the Lloyd Shield Ring. With me doing all this prep, I also figured I would go get the Dark Clutch Ring in Ethereal Dungeon and save Grey Rat and send him off to find some goodies. Now, with my intelligence being at a reasonable level, I figured it was time to have a rematch with the old Demon King. So the Crystal Sage weapon art is a backstab into a single attack or a multi-thrust attack, neither of which did more damage than just spamming R1. For the Demon King, I focused on staying to his right side since I found you could loop his Slam attack and his Fireball attack. I just had to watch out for the times he would do his ground AoE. Sadly, the Rapier was only doing 74 damage per hit, that's even with me using the Magic Clutch Ring, Lloyd's Sword, and Flynn's Ring for extra damage. So, with low damage leads to long fights, which then lead to me eventually fucking up. It ended up taking me 8 tries to beat the old bastard, just had to slowly poke him to death. After thrusting the old king to death, I traded in his soul for the old king's great hammer, sent Grey Rat on another adventure to get Moonlight Arrows, and level my faith up to 13 so that I could use Walnir's Holy Sword to take on Dancer. Overall, Dancer wasn't too bad of a fight. I did die 15 times, but that was mostly due to not knowing her second phase that well. In my last run, I was able to kill her so quickly that I didn't need to learn it, but here, with an unupgraded Walnir's Holy Sword, I definitely had to learn it. The cool thing about Walnir's Sword is that it can do a mini Wrath of God. It did not help. I am starting to see a pattern with these weapon arts. For Dancer's first phase, I just stayed on her behind and smacked it real good. Now, for the second phase, I found 3 opportunities to attack. The first is when she does her spin attack. On the very last rotation, you can roll in and get about 2 hits off. The second opener is after she does her jump attack, you can roll right after to dodge her follow-up spin attack to get another 2 hits in. The third and final opener is when she does her overhead attack. Now, for this one, I had to be careful and wait a second before attacking. She has a random chance of doing a follow-up attack afterwards, which I could still dodge and get the punish off. With learning these 3 openers, I was able to beat Dancer with an unupgraded weapon. After having my 7 minutes in heaven with Dancer, I acquire her enchanted swords and level my endurance up a bit. So, I went to check on Grey Rat and noticed he wasn't back yet. Nah, I'm probably just overthinking it. I'll just go fight another boss real quick. The next boss on the hit list is Dragon Slayer Armor. The weapon I chose for this fight was Old King's Great Hammer. As much as I like dex weapons like Dancer's enchanted swords, I knew the hammer would be easier since I could stagger Dragon Slayer with it, which I was 100% right. What I didn't take into account was the fucking undead Moonlight Butterflies being a dick. Another situation where in my last run, the fight went by so quick I never had to actually learn this phase. Also, for this fight, I ended up not realizing that Old King's Great Hammer's weapon art isn't just a normal perseverance. When activating it and then pressing R2, you'll do a molten attack which can hit through shields, which would have been super useful, but when I was testing the weapon at the time, I honestly thought it was just a normal perseverance, and the game didn't tell me otherwise. So I ended up never using it. Either way, I ended up finding a strategy without it. What I ended up doing was just doing a single hits after his normal combos, and when he would do his charge attack or be knocked down, I would do a charge R2 for more damage. I also made sure to get the Fire Clutch Ring right before this fight to help out with the extra fire damage that the weapon does. For the butterflies, I just ran for dear life or rolled like crazy. Not too sure how to properly deal with them, but finally after 29 deaths, I was able to kill Dragon Slayer Armor. After getting Dragon Slayer Soul, I used it to get his weapon, Dragon Slayer Axe, which is considered to be one of the strongest weapons in the game. Once again, I go to check on Grey Rat, and he's not there. That's weird. Why wouldn't he be back now? Oh, I fucked up. So apparently you need Sigurd or Patches to save him on his second outing. Whoops. But I can get his severed hand and give it to the Handmaiden to still be able to buy Moonlight Arrows. So it technically still worked out in the end? After trading in Grey Rat's hand, I then buy 99 Moonlight Arrows and Dark Arrows to take on Yorm. At this point in the run, I hadn't upgraded a weapon and was feeling ballsy, so I went try Yorm without upgrading the Moonlight Longbow. Yep, nope, fuck that. So I went collect as many Titanite scales as I could and upgraded the bow to +3. While I was at it, I decided to be smart and catch up on Estus shards and bone shards. 8 Estus and +6 healing just wasn't cutting it anymore. For Yorm, I got my intelligence up to 30 to help out with as much damage as possible, and paired it with Magic Clutch Ring, Lloyd's Sword, and Flynn's Ring for more damage. Now, the reason I went with Dark Arrows is because they have a special perk of heat seeking onto locked on parts. So I would use the Dark Arrows to hit Yorm's head to the point of it breaking, and then use Moonlight Arrows for extra damage. A very chill fight until Yorm decided to Superman punch me out of nowheres. Not so chill at that point. I ended up getting thrown off by this, leading to me using all my assists to then get hit, leaving me with a sliver of health, with Yorm only at about a quarter of health left. I would be lying if I said I wasn't scared at this point, but I played it safe and kept my distance and was able to take down the fiery giant. With Yorm knocked down a few pegs, I picked up his weapon, collected some more Tynite Scales and Lothrich's Castle, and upgraded his weapon to +3, so that I can take on Osiris. Tragically, the first round went by very quickly, but the second round was much better. With Yorm's Great Machete, it has the weapon art Warcry, which gives about 8.3% more damage for 30 seconds, and it has amazing range. The only downside is, its dodge attack definitely has no range. For this fight, I just straight up Unga Bunga it to victory. No brain cells were used for this victory, just straight up hit boss with big weapon to win. With Osiris dead, I pick up the Path of the Dragon and the Tynite Scales in the area. Once done there, I head to Archdragon Peak, pick up the Lightning Clutch Ring, and kill the Ancient Wyvern with the Dancer's Enchanted Swords. Sorry dagger lovers, but a weapon had to be used for this fight, and it wasn't going to be Moonlight Greatsword or Dragon Slayer Great Axe. After killing the Wyvern, I run through the area to get the Dragon Chaser's Ashes so that I can now buy as many Tynite Scales as I want. And yes, I took the express route back to the bonfire. Since Ancient Wyvern doesn't have a boss weapon, I now get to pick one as one of my lifelines, and I went with the Demon's Great Axe. The reason I went with this weapon is because it does slashing damage and fire damage, which the Gravetender Great Wolf is weak to. So I level it up to +4 and use the souls from the Wyvern to get myself to 84. From here, I head to the cathedral to find creepy Santa Claus bent over in a weird position, asking me to touch his painting? And I obliged. Once in the painted world of Ariandel, I kill the wolf pack and weaken the Great Wolf. For those of you who do not know, if you wound him here, he will have less health in the actual fight. With that done, I run down some tree roots to take on Champion's Gravetender. Now, this is my first time taking on the DLC fully, but in my last run, I did spar with this boss. I just didn't win. This fight in general is pretty straightforward. Bait the first wolf to come out, dodge, and kill it. Then the other two will come out howling at you, which you can kill them while they're doing that. For Gravetender, I like to lead him back to the covered area since when he gets to half health, he will summon the Great Wolf. The attack that I like to punish is his leap attack, when strafing to the left side and back leads for easy hits. I was also able to get the axe's weapon art off that does a fire AoE attack, and honestly, it did not help. Now, the real trouble I had with this fight was the Great Wolf. His hitboxes just confused me. I would think I would be safe rolling to some of his attacks to just still get hit, but after 2 deaths, I finally figured him out and was able to kill him with some good old DPS pressuring. Also, from here on out, I'll be upgrading all the weapons to +4. After upgrading Valhart, I head over to Champion Gundyr. Champion Gundyr was a super fun fight. With Valhart being a fast weapon and Gundyr being relatively fast, it created such a fun flow to the fight. I honestly considered dying on purpose just so I could keep fighting him, but me trying to get the kill with Valhart's weapon art did the trick for me. Once abandoning that idea after the 3rd attempt, Champion Gundyr went down. Sadly. With Gundyr defeated, I decided to storm the castle and take on the Twin Princes. I decided for this fight to go with the Moonlight Greatsword. Most bosses after this one have a pretty high magic defense, so I figured this was the best fight to use it on. At the very start of the fight, if you just stand still and don't move, the Elder Prince won't jump your ass. Really wish I knew about this on my last run, but that aside, the first phase was a cakewalk with the Moonlight Sword, especially with it being paired with the Magic Clutch Ring. I also found out the Elder Prince can be poise broken, so that was neat to learn. Most of my troubles came with the second phase, with the range heat-seeking attacks and the constant teleporting attacks. At the time, I would just get confused and end up spam rolling, which would cause me to die. 6 times to be exact. Much better than 114 deaths on my last run. For the second phase, I just made sure to keep pressure on the backside of the two brothers. When it came time to hit the younger brother, I could only get a few hits in before I would have to run away. With him having a higher magic defense, it was taking a good amount of hits to kill him. But I am happy to say I was able to beat them with using the weapon art. With the princes dead, I make my way back to the DLC, have some more PTSD sliding down this slope, and take on Sir Valhelm, who I'm pretty sure JK Leeds was controlling, because who else would do this taunt right here? Look, the evidence doesn't lie. After defeating Sir Leeds, I find a small child who's calling creepy Santa uncle, and I don't know how I feel about that. Once done chatting, I pull a lever, and I'm pretty sure Frida is not too happy about it. Yep. Definitely not happy about it. Also, Miyazaki is not beating the foot fetish allegations after this scene, that's for sure. Foot fetishes aside, it's time to take on Sister Frida. Straight up, I struggled with this fight. Granted, it was my first time ever fighting her, so it's to be expected, but I wasn't expecting to get pounded by her this hard. I ended up dying 28 times in total. I figured with having a +4 weapon and being level 88 at the time, I wouldn't have any issues, but I definitely did. I started off using Gundir's halberd, which was doing well with its crazy long reach and its weapon art charge attack being able to punish Frida. But it was a bit slow for me for her third phase, so I decided to use Lorraine's greatsword, which was my pick from the Twin Souls. The reason I switched to this weapon is that it was a bit faster and its weapon art Flame of Lorraine adds 80 fire damage. Pair this with the Fire Clutch ring and you get big damage. But even with big damage, it couldn't compensate for lack of experience. It was around my 20th death that I remembered that you can go to Rosaria and use a Pale Tongue to reset your stats. The only caveat to this is I can only do it 5 times. So I spend a Pale Tongue and set my stats to the highest damage possible and boost my vigor up a bit. With that done, it made the fight a lot more manageable. Her first phase wasn't too hard to figure out. When she would go invisible, she either jumps up, which you can just turn around, or she dashes to the side and you just have to follow the snow particles. When she does her jump attack, just roll twice behind her to dodge both the jump attack and the ice AoE. The plus side to all these attacks is that she can be backstabbed after each one. The second phase was just annoying, personally. Having to run around trying to split Father and Frida up was just a bit boring, and if they stack on top of each other, I was just fucked. But I learned to just do the safe thing and do hidden runs to get past this part. Now, the third phase is crazy, but super fun. I honestly wish I could just skip phase 2 and just come straight here. Finding out you can punish her first attack by running in afterwards, and that you can roll and walk behind her dash attack to get a backstab in was some epic moments. I will say though, this was the phase that gave me the most trouble. With how fast she could attack, I would easily get punished, which would lead to me getting comboed to death. The worst was on my 25th attempt when I was only 1 hit away from winning, and she did this. I 100% cried inside, but my suffering would soon be alleviated because on attempt 29, I was finally able to take down Sister Frida. With Sister Frida defeated, I make my way to the Demon Princes to find this monstrosity. What the fuck were they smoking at FromSoft? So I ran right past them and did a professional speedrunner skip. See, I did it. So that I can take on the Demon Prince. The Demon Prince is probably FromSoft's best duo fight. Now, I've never beaten Elden Ring, so I can't say for that game, but for the Souls trilogy, it's 100% the best duo boss. With one being aggressive while the other is passive, it gives you that nice breathing room to actually fight one of the bosses one-on-one for a bit. At the same time, you still get those chaotic moments with both of them being aggressive at the same time, which creates a fun experience. In comparison to most duo fights where you pray that you get lucky to get a hit in while the other one isn't looking. Looking at you, ONS and Shadows of Yharnam. With that said, I did make the major mistake of killing the demon below first. I had no clue if you kill him first, he goes fucking Vegito on your ass, summoning a giant fire spirit bomb. Whereas if you kill the Demon Prince first, it's more like taking on Krillin and Yamcha if they fused. For this fight, I went with Gundir's halberd and reallocated my points to focus on strength and vigor. Disappointingly, this didn't give me as much damage as I would like, so I finally decided to use one of my Titanite slabs to get the weapon to +5. And with that one simple change and killing the demons in the right order, I earned my first victory after 6 attempts. After slaying the best duo boss, I returned to Rosaria and changed my stats for Dragon Slayer Great Axe. And you know what that means, it's time to slay a dragon. Motherfucking Madir is one thick-ass boy with thicker hitboxes because I had no clue what I was being hit by most of the time. It wasn't an easy fight, but having Dragon Slayer Great Axe at +5 with Lightning Clutch Ring, Lloyd Sword Ring, and Flynn's Ring, I did some decent damage to the big fella. Especially after some of his fire attacks, you can get Falling Bolt off, which is super satisfying. I did die 9 times, but it only took me getting to his second phase for the second time to get a stagger off for a critical attack, to just lower his health enough to get the most satisfying kill with Falling Bolt. An epic finish to an epic fight. With motherfucking Madir defeated, I get his weapon, Frayed Blade, reallocate my points into Dex for damage and Luck for bleed proc, to take on the dragon lover himself, the Nameless King. For those of you who do not know, the first time I beat Dark Souls 3 all the way back in 2016, I used the Uchi Katana. So I wanted to relive that moment here again with the Frayed Blade with the Nameless King, and it did not disappoint. I did run into a small hiccup with the chicken and the Nameless King's weirdly wide hitboxes. Did not have that issue in the last run, but hiccups aside, it didn't take too many hits to kill the oversized chicken. Now, for the actual fun part, the Nameless King. Here, I made sure to use the Karthos Blood Ring for the extra iframe so that I could have that true Dex Lover experience. With Frayed Blade and the Karthos Ring, I was weaving and slashing the Nameless King with no effort, until he slammed a lightning bolt in my face, and that for sure woke me up. Near the end of the fight, I tried to finish him off with the cool multi-hit attack, but I kept pressing R1 instead of R2, which ends up doing a long-range slash attack. Well, at least I beat him on my first try. After that fun fight, I used the Nameless King's soul to get his spear and used my last rebirth of the run to set my stats back to a more balanced build with the weapons I had remaining. With me finished being reborn for the 5th time, I was ready for the Soul of Cinder. For this fight, I went with the Dragon Slayer Sword Spear since it does lightning damage and the Soul of Cinder is weak to that. I wish this fight was as easy as the Nameless King, but I just struggle with the Cinder for some reason. His first phase is mostly his attack timings that throw me off. The way he switches between fast attacks, semi-delayed attacks, and delayed attacks, I just end up getting caught off guard with the constant change of pace. For the second phase, it's his damn anime combo. That damn move killed me way too many times. I eventually learned to just run away when seeing it. The key I found to winning this fight was just switching the spear to one-handed over two-handed, since in its two-handed form it is used as a sword, whereas in its single-handed form it is used as a spear. I would also make sure to use Falling Bolt to buff my weapon with lightning damage. Sadly, anytime I would try to hit Cinder with the bolt, I would be too far away, and I was not brave enough to try it up close. But finally, after dying 15 times, I killed the Soul of Bastards. With Cinder's defeated, I take his weapon to take on Half-Light, FromSoft's half attempt of making a fun boss fight. Oh, well, at least someone used it properly in this run. This fight wasn't really hard, but I can see why everyone likes to cheese it with poison. Honestly, if it wasn't for the second damn Painting Guardian, the fight would be slightly better. I think the crazy part is that Half-Light just has infinite mana to spam weapon art skills, but I did find a way to get a guaranteed kill without poison. Once I finally killed the second Guardian, I found you can get a free hit after he shoots his bow. You just need to be careful he's not too close to the lightning spears. I also found you can hit him after he does his slash attack, but that one was a hit or miss on whether he would retaliate or not. The only 100% safe option was the bow, and right after killing the Guardian, I ran out of Estus, so I had to play the patient game, but it paid off. Only after 4 attempts, I was able to beat Half-Light. With Half-Light defeated, I level up for the last time and put my last point into luck because I will need it. From here, I head to the final area of the Ring City to find a pretty lady and what happens when a gamer touches a pretty lady. Oh, shit, that's right. Boo, you suck. Thanks, Scully. After being transported to the end of the world, I find creepy Santa munching on some naughty children, and apparently I also made the naughty list this year. Slave Knight Gale was a crazy, epic, but pretty easy fight. Starting off, I tried using Frida's Great Scythe, but found that with only 10 luck, the Frostbite didn't really proc much. So I decided to use my last lifeline of this run, thanks to Half-Light, to go with Twin Prince's Great Sword. I chose this weapon over my other options for the poise damage. All my other options were straight swords, a curved sword, or a flail, and I really don't want to get freaky with Creepy Santa. With the Twin Prince's Greatsword, it would only take 3 hits to stagger Gale to allow me a 4th hit in, and that was my key to success. Even into his 2nd and 3rd phase, I was still able to 3-hit him into a stagger, and it almost became easier at some points since he had longer recovery times. Now, it got a bit spicy near the end thanks to the damn lightning, but at the very end, I was able to get a final stagger off to then land the killing blow. It only took 11 deaths to finally finish this wild ride of a run. Man, I did not expect to die as much as I did in this run, but it goes to show you DS3 is no joke. With that said, I would like to thank my channel supporters. If you too would like to support the channel or have your name in the video, you can click the Patreon link in the description or click the YouTube join button. I also from time to time stream my runs, so you can catch me streaming on YouTube or over on Twitch at Kane Gaming. I want to thank you all for watching, and until next time, take care.